Charter Trustees, officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Worshipful, the Mayor of Bournemouth, Councillor Anne Filer.
I won't be a minute, I've just got to get my glasses out of my bag and then I will start the meeting. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to welcome you. I'm so pleased that there are so many people here. So I know there's lots of other things going on at the moment, and I'm delighted that you were able to come. I'd like to welcome all the Charter Trustees who are here, the press, and members of the public, including any of them who are watching online, to this meeting of the Bournemouth Charter Trustees. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, could you just remember some ground rules for speaking? First of all, there are so many new people that I actually haven't met all of you, so if you want to speak, could you please just say your name so that we all get to know one another very quickly, but at least in these early days, if you could say your name, that would really help everybody. And raise your hand to indicate if you want to speak. I don't think we're likely to have any motions, but if there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I'll ask if there's any dissension, and if a formal vote is required, it'll be carried out by a show of hands. And I've got a strange little note here at the bottom. As a courtesy, please do not talk amongst yourselves during the debates. I'm sure none of you would ever do that. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed via the Council's YouTube channel, where a recording will be available for a minimum of 6 months. Before we start the business on the agenda, I'd like to highlight that the Charter Trustees is a non-political body with the primary objective being to maintain and promote the historic and ceremonial traditions of Bournemouth. I'm keen that we all work together to maintain this objective. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have several apologies. May I read them out?
Please do.
The first one is from Graham Farrant, the Chief Executive of BCP Council and Honorary Clerk to these trustees for whom I'm substituting. Also from Councillors Bartlett, Councillor Beasley, who's asked us particularly to say that he's away on local government business, Councillor D. Brown, Councillor Burton, who may be arriving late, and then Councillors Challoner, Connolly, Dalton Gibson, Keddy, Hannah, G. Martin, J. Martin, Northover, Rampton, and Wilson. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Honorary Clerk, can you report on any declarations of interest received?
There have been none received to date, Madam Mayor.
The Charter Trustees are asked to receive the minutes of the meetings which were held on the 23rd of January and the 26th of May, and to consider any matters arising. Are these agreed? I think they're agreed.
Councillor Broadhead's indicated.
Oh, you indicate. I'm just sorry.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, it was just to give apologies for Councillor Bobby Dove as well.
Thank you.
Is everybody happy with the minutes? I think we've agreed those. That seems to be all right. Now, the item 4 on the agenda is the Charter Mayor's report, and it's been quite I was installed at the annual meeting, and a lot of you couldn't come for various reasons, not least that you'd only been on the council and you were in the midst of all the training, and it was very short. I'm just going to say that those of you, I know I sent an email around, but those of you who haven't come across a mare before and haven't used it, I'm here to help within the community of Bournemouth in any way I can, help all of you in your work, and I would like to. Back in the day, before we had COVID, there were an awful lot of community events on. Things were going on in the mayor, and now we've got a chairman who's above the mayor in status, but the mayor would come along to so many different functions and respect the people who were running those functions, particularly charitable work or big community events, things like, I know we met at the Q-Pips in the park, and all sorts of community events. And you might think, well, so what? It's not a question of me putting on my bling and coming along to the event. It's a question of those people who are putting on the event and using a lot of energy and work, and hard work and hard dedication, looking after people at the various charities that we have. For them, it's an acknowledgement by the council of the work that they're doing. Of Bournemouth, by Bournemouth, not the council, because the council is something different, by the Charter Trustees of the work that they're doing. And I'd really like to build it up again. So I'd like you to know that if you've got an event in your area that you think it would be add a bit of something to a bit of status, or you've got people who are working really hard on a charitable project, or you've got school children in your ward who you think it would be good for them to see democracy in action by being invited to the town hall or by the mayor attending one of their assemblies, please ask. I know that George, who's my deputy, and I both feel really strongly about this. We would like to be really involved within the community. So that's just the background of it. Some of the things that I've done so far have been quite interesting. I had an interview on Hope Radio, and I hadn't realised there was a Hope Radio till I got interviewed on it, so that was quite interesting. Bournemouth in Bloom, which is a fantastic organisation. I've been invited to a number of their events, and I've been to one of them, and I've got another couple coming up. They don't just hanging baskets outside of shops and their houses and make lovely gardens, which of course is what they do, but they're involved with school children growing things. They're involved in, they've taken little bits of corners, neglected corners of the town around Bournemouth, and they dig them up and plant them up and dig out all the old plants and make them look pretty, just to give a bit of civic pride to people. And I'm just so impressed. They're really dedicated people who do that. I was invited to a cheerleaders event. Now that, in Kings Park, I'm sure a lot of people know that there used to be an indoor bowl centre, which has recently stopped being an indoor bowl centre, and it was quite controversial. I had lots of letters before I was mayor saying, oh, please don't get rid of our centre. And I had no idea what it was going to be used for at all. But I went along to this event. It was cheerleaders. So I sort of thought people with pom-poms and batons. Absolutely not. It's like floor gymnastics at the highest level. And they had kids, children go there every night of the week, Monday to Friday, every night. They're coached by volunteers. I met a couple of the coaches who work at JP Morgan during the day and then coach every night. And the children are doing the most intricate floor gymnastics you've ever seen. Somersaults. They enter competitions nationally. One of the groups from there went into a competition in America, which is the home of cheerleading. We were just really impressed. It was something really amazing, and they're hoping it will become an Olympic sport. So I was happy to see that, and I was happy to see that that bowling centre is being put to everyday use. And there were 200 or 300 children at the demonstration that we went to see, and lots of parents. I've been to a 100th birthday. That's one of the things the mayor does, go and greet people if they would want the mayor to come along. They get a postcard, a birthday card from the king, and then the mayor comes along. But it's nice, and the lady that I went to see was really appreciative, and I know there'll be more as the year goes on. Shake and Stir in Southbourne last weekend. Did anybody go along to that? It was absolutely... I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like vintage dancing. Not at all. It's a huge community event. There were 99 stalls and about 20,000 people went through the doors over the weekend. Absolutely fantastic. If you can go next year, go, because it was something special with food and and it's organised, it's not organised by Bournemouth Tourism or anybody like that. It's organised by the community, and it's a really good event, really fabulous, wonderful music. I've had a couple of parties of school children in here. I mentioned them just now. It was very interesting. I had the little ones were only 5, and then they went up to, they were at primary school, and they were going up to kids who were just leaving school now to go to big school. And the ones who came in here just recently, they were the school council. So I asked them how they got elected, and they told me. That was very nice. They know that just what happened to us last month, exactly the same. People had to put names in a hat, and then they took them out and they counted them up. And when I said, well, that's just what we all do, they were really, really pleased. It was lovely to meet them. And they asked some very interesting questions about democracy and other things, and including how old am I, and am I very rich, which were 2 very good questions. How old am I had to answer by saying, probably as old as your grandma. Because I wasn't sure what the right answer was. Because I think if I'd said I was 40, they'd have thought I was old. Anyway, it's a very, very good thing, and I hope that most of the schools in the borough will be able to come along, because after we'd been in the Mayor's Parlour, which they were very impressed with, and they had a talk from the mace bearer who showed them this mace, and then another one with nails in it that they used to clobber people on the head if they were trying to steal the mayor's money bags. It was a very interesting evening, and the children loved it, and I can recommend it to any schools, because seeing democracy in action is going to be what gives those children the desire to do what all of you have done, which is to be part of democracy. And apart from that, I've got a full diary coming up, but those were some of the interesting events, and I think it's only when you're mayor that you get to see things that you wouldn't otherwise get to see, and to hear about people doing things that you wouldn't otherwise hear about. So I think it's very worthwhile. It's not me, it's the office of mayor, and next year it'll be somebody else. And but what I want to do this year is bring it back after the COVID as much as possible. So please, and pass it on to your colleagues who couldn't be here, that we're as a mayoral team, we're really up for it, and we'll really come and help as much as we can. So we want to ensure the future of the mayoralty, and it's completely non-political, so it doesn't matter which ward, where it is, who's organising it. If it's suitable, we'll do it. And always bearing in mind that we have a chairman who is, well, is Councillor Leslie Dedman is the chairman of the council, and her role is in precedence, it's above the mayors. We've got a mayor of Christchurch, a mayor of Poole, and a mayor of Bournemouth. But it's a different role, and if ever an invitation comes in and the mayoral team thinks that it's more for the chairman than the mayor, that's just fine. You know, as far as I'm concerned, as long as people get the civic recognition, that's fine with me. So, and that's how it will be. And that's the end of my report. Oh, I missed something. Before we got into the happy business of my report, I have some sad news that since the last meeting, 4 former Bournemouth councillors have passed away, and they were Councillor Barbara Smith, who was a councillor when I first joined the council in 1999, Councillor David Clutterbuck, who was a colleague of mine, Councillor Roger West, who joined the council at the same time I did, and Councillor Marjorie Bennion, who I remember well. They were all very lovely people, and I send, on behalf of us all, heartfelt condolences to their friends and family. And can I ask you all to be upstanding and observe a minute's silence? I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen. That should have been up further on the agenda. My first meeting, I'm allowed to make mistakes. Item 5 on the agenda is the report of the Civic Working Group. And I'm going to ask Councillor George Farquhar to present the report of that Civic Working Group. George.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm allowed to make mistakes as well. New to the role. You'll find the report in the agenda on page 11, agenda item 5. The Civic Working Group has been looking at the Charter Trustees handbook, which I commend to you all in the same way that I would commend you to read the Constitution, because it explains the different roles within the Charter Trustees and how we come together and we work together to actually fulfil our civic duties, not only to the office of the Mayor, but to our residents. So it is in the report there. You'll also find that is an appendix. The Trustees Handbook is no more than 12 pages long. It's an easy enough read, but it certainly enlightens me to the roles within the Trustees. I'd call upon Mr. Fraser just to point out some of the technical things which have changed, and they're merely technical items to ensure that each of the roles is fulfilled.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If I can just commit the report to trustees with the additions in mind, these are detailed within the section 2 of the report, which is the revisions to the handbook. These include updated key positions and roles of trustees, confirmation of the statutory 4 meetings per year and the business to be conducted at those meetings, a new section detailing the membership of the civic working groups, a new section confirming the bank verification role, an amended protocol for the selection to office in an election year, and a new section detailing protocol for the wearing of robes and hats, as well as a reminder of civic events. And finally, if I remember correctly, yes, contact details for the civic team, which we ask you all to use. So they are mostly additive and designed to clarify existing protocol and set out some of the more recent roles, such as budget signatories, as well as incorporating feedback to the handbook that we've received from various councillors over the last 4 years since it was first put together. So that should it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fraser. With your permission, Madam Mayor, I'd like to open up the debate, if there is any, from the trustees.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask a query? Bournemouth Charter Trustees has a constitution. Obviously, this guidebook summarises it, puts it into more layman's language, everything like that. Is there a link on the website of BCP for somebody to access the constitution? Because I did have somebody reference Poole Charter Trustees saying they were looking for it on the BCP website and they couldn't find it. And if it also, okay, it may be on the website, but would it be any point, because a lot of people will be reading this guide electronically like you should, is there any merit in having a link to the Constitution built into this guide? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Just to set out that they're on the Bournemouth Charter Trustee website, which is a sub-website of the overall council website. It does list the standing orders and financial regulations that govern the Charter Trustees. I can always forward that link to all trustees following the meeting, just so you have that on record. It also obviously contains a link to the handbook itself, which will obviously be updated once we put together the revised handbook, if it is indeed improved. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Well, in that case, what I would do, Madam Mayor, is I would move that we accept the recommendations as laid out in the report to update the Charter Trustees Handbook, which was in Appendix 1.
Thank you. Will someone second that? Thank you. Is everybody agreed? Great, that's carried. So item 6 on the agenda is the Charter Trustees 2023 Internal Audit Report. I call upon Matt Filmer, Responsible Financial Officer, to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Charter Trustees. So the next two agenda items lead on to agenda item 8, which is the sign-off of the annual governance and accountability return. So it's a statutory document that the Charter Trustees have to complete every year. It has to be signed off by the end of June, it has to go online, it's then open to public inspection, and then it's externally audited. So the first part of that AGAR return is the annual governance statement. And to support that, we have a yearly internal audit review. And you'll see on the report, agenda item 6, page 3, that the internal audit team have focused on the objectives that are required as part of the annual governance statement review. And you'll see that they've scored everything in the remit substantial or reasonable, which is very similar to what it was last year. The internal audit team also extend the scope of what they look at to the wider entity, Charter Trustees, to make sure that we're looking at all other risks that are, that could come up within the organisation. And they're summarised on page 4 of the pack. You'll see there's a number of medium and low priority findings that the internal audit team have found. A couple are around the financial piece. One is reserves, which I'll mention on the next agenda item. But Madam, I'm not proposing to go through any detail of that. I'm just happy to take any questions on those findings.
Thank you, Matt. So that report is for noting, so there's no need for us to vote on that. Item 7 is the Budget Outturn Report 22-23.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I assume there was no questions on that internal audit report.
Trustees, do you note that report that we just heard from Matt? Thank you. And now we're going on to item 7, which is the budget outturn. And I'll hand over to Matt again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the outturn report for the 22-23 financial year. The Charter Trustees underspent against their budget of just shy of 24,000. We've consistently underspent since its inception for the Charter Trustees. You'll see on Appendix A to the report the detailed outturn across the various budget items that were agreed as per the budget back in January 2022. The reason for the underspend is to do with the civic events and the sort of civic activities that the Charter Trustees carry out. We set budgets, but some of those activities did not occur, so hence the underspend. A majority of the budget for the Charter Trustees are fixed. They're recharges between the Council and the Charter Trustees. So where there's the variable nature of the spend, that's where the underspend sits. You'll see at the bottom of Appendix A, we started the year with reserves of just shy of 67,000, and we're ending the year just shy of £91,000. And to put that into perspective, £91,000 in regards to the precept that we set for Bournemouth residents, that's around 54%. Recommendation for myself would be we have around about 20% risk cover for anything that does crop up, so we are above that level. A proposal, which I welcome sort of discussion perhaps on the floor, is that we take discussion to the Civic Working Group about plans use for that reserves, and also what we potentially want to do for council tax next year, before we come to the January meeting for setting the budget. So I'm happy to take any questions, Madam Mayor.
Does anyone have any questions, or are we prepared to move Matt's suggestion? Thank you.
Thank you. I was at the pool Charter Trustees meeting yesterday evening. I've got similar queries that one of the council raised there. That there are some, if one goes to page 43 of the electronic document, for example, on fuel, it was budgeted for £1,500, only £188 was spent. Uniforms, 500, only £24 was spent. An explanation was given as to why some of the amounts bear no relationship to the budgeted amount, the actual spend, and it would be useful if the officer could give, the same explanation for some people who aren't at this meeting or maybe looking at this document subsequently, trying to understand why there are some inconsistencies there, please. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So there was a challenge in terms of trying to pull some of the expenditure against some of the budget lines because the Democratic team, they have credit card expenditure and that covers all manner of different things, and it's quite a manual process to take that expenditure and link it to some of these budget lines. So fuel as an example, which is showing about £188 spend, that's the most accurate figure that we can pull out based on the data we've got. It's potential that there is some other expenditure within hospitality that's been lost within some of that credit card expenditure. To give some assurance, we are improving that. We've got a new finance system that's coming with credit cards linked to the finance system that are then coded directly when the spend occurs. So hopefully it's an anomaly for this year and it will improve going forward. Hopefully that's satisfactory. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? So if we're all agreed, and if there are no other questions and we're all agreed, can we indicate, please? Agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Item 8 is the annual governance statement 22-23 and statement of accounts for 22-23. I'll call upon Matt Filmer again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the annual governance and accountability return. If we could have approval on two parts, if that's okay, Madam Mayor. The first one is the annual governance statement for 22-23, which is on page 4, and this is reflective of the internal audit report that I referred to on the previous agenda. If the Charter Trustees are in approval after the meeting, I'll look for the Chairman and the Clerk, the Chairman being yourself, Madam Mayor, to sign this document. If we could take a vote there, if that's okay, and then I'll come back.
Are you agreed with that? Any questions? Agreed? That's agreed, Matt. You can carry on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And then the last part is the accounting statements, which is on page 5 of the AGAR. That, again, is reflective of the outturn figures that I just presented. There are two other figures that I'll just highlight. There's the valuation of the civic regalia that the Bournemouth Charter Trustees hold, which is £646,000, and that's effectively the insurance cover for the things like the mace, etc. And there's the actual cash balance that the Charter Trustees have in their bank, which ends the year at £238,000. The reason it differs between the bank and the actual reserves is to do with timings in terms of invoices between us and the council. So if there were approval of that, it will be myself and yourself, Madam Mayor, to approve it. Thank you.
Are there any questions? And we need to take a formal vote, so is that all agreed?
Agreed.
No one against? So that actually, there's no more business for you, Matt. That actually concludes the meeting. I thought it would be short, and I hope everyone goes off and enjoys the lovely summer evening. And please spread the word that the Charter Trustees of Bournemouth, and I can't speak for Paul or Christchurch or anybody else, but we've got great traditions here. We've got a lovely, lovely building. We've got a lovely mayor's parlour, and we need to keep it. We need to make sure it's used and kept and valued and seen. So please do that. I've got a whole year to look forward to, and I look forward to seeing much, much more of all of you. And thank you very much for attending.
Could you please be upstanding while the civic party departs the chamber?